Hello everybody and welcome back to the Bayonetta 2 walkthrough. It's time for even more extras. This time we are going to be taking a look at third climax mode. And this is going to be for the next 3 parts. Because in addition to showing off all the various costumes that Bayonetta can wear actually in-game, and how they affect kind of cutscenes and stuff, it's also going to show off kind of certain battles and just in general I'm going to discuss all the stuff to do with third climax because I felt like doing this, and also because if you complete the game on third climax then you are allowed, well, you unlock Rosa to play as. And also, you unlock Super Mirror 64. So, if you want to try and get everything, then you are going to have to play third climax at some point. Also, you have to do third climax because that is the only way that you're going to be able to unlock infinite climax mode, which is the hardest difficulty setting in the game. Now, in the grand scheme of things, third climax is not that bad. I mean, it's certainly more difficult than second climax, and I'd say sort of it's about the same as, if maybe slightly more difficult than Bayonetta 1's normal. So it's alright. I think if I tried to platinum the game on third climax I would have had a lot more of a challenge. But Bayonetta 2's normal mode is definitely second climax, and as a result Bayonetta 2 is in general easier to play and easier to beat than the original game. I mean, even third climax isn't that bad.
The last sage I met spent 20 minutes rambling on and on.
Now, something that I'm going to be doing throughout this entire thing is just kind of, it's going to be a montage. So you're going to see the entirety of the game in 3 parts, which I'd say I'm quite proud of that feat. It's also because I wanted to kind of highlight just some of my favourite cutscenes and all that jazz. Now, one thing that kind of happens when you kind of play Bayonetta 2 again is that sort of, at least at the beginning, you understand what things are kind of calling forward to, so the end is sort of a false rendering of what happens later in the game. And that's kind of how Aesir works. He presents you with false memories, essentially. And that's what you get when you see Rosa and dying and Boulder mourning her. Also, oh, the Star Fox costume! This still remains my favourite cutscene in the entirety of the game. It's just wonderfully bonkers. And no matter the costume, it's stunning. Now, you may be wondering, why have you chosen to go as the Star Fox costume for this particular chapter? Well, there's 2 primary reasons for that. And one of them is right now. Because when Rodan throws the wonderful box, we get the R-Wing guns. So it's still Love is Blue, but it's the model for the Star Fox guns, And I mean, they're awesome. I love them to pieces. And what's really phenomenally brilliant about Bayonetta 2 is that all of the cutscenes are in real time. So, in Bayonetta 1, part of the problem was that certain cutscenes were real time, so you would have the costume that you were wearing in them, and other times it was pre-rendered. So you would have kind of this awkward thing that would happen where you would have Bayonetta in her normal costume partway through a cutscene, and then Bayonetta in her kind of new costume. So it was slightly jarring, and in this game they actually managed to get it so that every single cutscene is kind of in real time, so you are always in the costume that you choose, with the character that you choose. Which is just brilliant. The only moments where Bayonetta will look like Bayonetta is when, like, the opening cutscene where she's in the dress, because at that point she isn't classified as being in a costume, and it's when she kind of derobes that it then puts you into the costume, and at the end where the same thing happens, where she's in the other, well, when she's in dress B, and then she changes out of that. Those are the only two moments where there is... It's still kind of real time and all, but yeah, it just has Bayonetta normal and get everything else otherwise.
That was quick. Did you get everything?
And also, as you probably saw, when you wear the Star Fox costume, when Jeanne kind of comes alongside you on the jet, it's an R-Wing, which is just like, oh my god. Now, I believe I may have already told this story? Not 100% sure, but either way. But what's really awesome is that I'm pretty sure that Nintendo actively suggested this costume to Platinum, and they were just like, oh my god, yes. Because Hideki Kami has always kind of wanted to make a Star Fox game. I mean, I don't think he'd quite want to make one now because the internet kind of killed it for him. By kind of just going on and on and on and on and on at him about it. But the fact that we are getting a new Star Fox game is just awesome. And I'm very, very, very thankful for that. I mean, a Platinum Games Star Fox game would be absolutely stunning, I have to say, but whether that will ever happen is a different matter altogether. Now, there are a few other things that I'm going to be doing throughout the next 3 parts, which cover Third Climax, and that is getting a load of bewitchments. So we'll be going after the... something like Ice Queen, which you get for freezing 40 types of enemies that aren't ice element. So basically, the way you go about doing that, as I believe I have said before, is just play through the game and freeze everything. The only ice elemental character that I can think of is Gravitas. Everything else is pretty much fair game. So you're going to be wanting to go for that. And then we're also going to be going for things to do with torture attacks, and there's also a really weird bewitchment which you get for touching Bayonetta once in 10 different cutscenes. Like, for the longest time I was just like, I don't quite know what you're asking me to do. But essentially, that it's being quite kind of simple. It's just, on the gamepad, just press Bayonetta once during a cutscene and repeat that 10 times in 10 different cutscenes. It's something that I did definitely do during this, and you will see it unlock at some point. I think it's around chapter 4, ish that I actually got it. It's something that I never actually brought up in the main run, but basically you can tap certain kind of things on the gamepad, like in levels. So like if there's a pillar, you can tap it, and certain things will provide you with halos. So you can just get free halos for randomly tapping everything that you can see, which is a really awesome little touch, but kind of pointless, because there is no way of telling what provides you with halos and what doesn't. It is also possible to play the game just using the gamepad, so like touch controls. I have never tried it. I never want to try it, because I am perfectly content with my button pressing expertise. And I feel much more comfortable playing the game just doing that, because it's how I've grown used to playing Bayonetta, and it's how I always will play it. But it is nice that it's there for people who kind of want a slightly new experience, or people who aren't, say, as expert in action games. Also, you may be wondering why I decided to show that entire fight with Gamora. Well, pure platinum. Find it absolutely ridiculous that I managed to pure platinum Gamora on third climax, but I couldn't do it on second climax, even though I did it on second climax when I beat the game the first time. It's just like,
I didn't know the in-flight service
what?
was exclusive to fat Italians.
Renting the plane ain't free, you know. That reminds me.
Now, another thing that's really cool about kind of the Bayonetta cutscenes is that you can very quickly skip them. Now, it is possible to do it in the first game, but I could never get the button prompt to work. But essentially what you do is you press Z, R and minus button at the same time, and you quickly skip the cutscene. It's an absolute godsend for kind of speed running through things. And you can also pause cutscenes by pressing a couple of times on the gamepad, and also just by pressing minus during it. So you can skip them, you can pause them, you can play them. It's really helpful. And having the option there is wonderful. And the fact that the quick cutscene skip actually works, and I've actually managed to get it to work, is brilliant. I love it.
Say hi to the wife and kids for me.
Wait, what? You're joking, right? I can't find this piece of shit! I told you I can't have nice things.
Now, something that will happen with these various kind of clothing items is that there is a lot of kind of clipping that goes on, because the way that the kind of cutscenes and even the gameplay is designed to function is based around Bayonetta's normal outfit, so with the hair, which can flow through anyway. Whereas these other bits of clothing kind of, because they are just bits of fabric, even though technically they can't flow through a leg, they will do. Because it's just kind of... It's sort of an oversight, but also it really doesn't matter, and to be honest, to try and get all the fabric to flow in the right places in every single cutscene and in gameplay just ends up being a waste of time and kind of space that could be better spent on, like, enemy animations. Now, what we're doing right now is we are getting a concoction bewitchment. Basically, you get a bewitchment for concocting every possible item, which is very easy to do. If you've beaten the game on second climax and you have you know, kind of attacks everything, opened every chest possible, beaten every verse, then you will have easily collected 99 of everything. So this becomes a very, very easy bewitchment to get. Slightly frustratingly, it is difficult to get some of these items later on if you aren't kind of actively pursuing unlocking stuff and finding concoction items. Because, I mean, particularly, well, later on, I think in this very run, and also to complete one particular bewitchment, and also to complete Infinite Climax, lollipops are incredibly helpful, and I would suggest essential if you want an easy ride.
If you're looking for the kid, he went that way.
Now, I really, really, really like the Umbran Gekka outfit. It's really cool, and it's sort of a kind of companion piece to the Umbran Geisha outfits that they had in Bayonetta 1. But it's sort of the I think it's Chinese style dress. It's basically what Anna wears in Tekken series.
I'm afraid I don't have time to dance too long.
Except sort of that has kind of much more of a skirt, whereas this is just kind of two ridiculously long bits of fabric just to kind of provide freedom of movement. Because, I mean, seriously, Bayonetta needs to be able to move those legs to actually succeed at anything. So the skirt would just kind of get in the way of all this sort of movement. Still don't like Valiance that much. I mean, he's a cool looking enemy and I think he's awesome, but just in general, he's a very odd enemy to read, and that's kind of the case for a lot of the enemies in Bayonetta 2. Don't know what it is about them, but just they're very odd. Also, fun little fact. So, obviously, a lot of people get a little bit pissy because Bayonetta strips to perform her wicked weaves and her climax attacks. But that's only kind of an issue in her primary outfits. Because whenever she's wearing a costume, as in the case here, and also when you have the Star Fox outfit on, and it's the same for every single outfit that is not made of hair, she stays fully clothed throughout the entirety of it. Because the whole thing with Bayonetta is that the Umbran Witches kind of use their hair as kind of a thing to control their magic. I have the phrase somewhere in my head, but I'm not quite sure where it is right now. And what that kind of ends up leading to is that when they have their kind of Umbran uniform, which is made out of their hair, well then, sort of, by virtue of using their hair to kind of summon their demons and use their magic, they necessarily have to remove some of that hair clothing to attack. Obviously, in quite a big way, it is just a sort of way of making them so that they're not clothed. But narratively it functions perfectly fine.
So, our fates and our paths cross once again.
And also there's just the really odd thing of the fact of... I mean, it might just be because I'm completely and utterly weird, but... like, I just kind of cease to even notice or care
Bingo.
that Bayonetta strips to attack. Like, it's something that happens, I don't really take much notice of it. And I would assume that for the majority of people who play the game, that is the case. I mean, obviously there are people who would get off to all of that, and there are also the people who find it absolutely disgusting. But I'm just kind of... yeah, it's just like it's just a thing that happens. The game kind of never really... I mean, it makes it obvious that that's what's happening, but it never specifically lingers
The name Nerine is derived from the
on the nakedness, and the entire thing is kind of...
appropriate for this city.
even though obviously there's the whole complicated thing of male game developers, I mean, there are
Will you quit calling me
female
that?
members of the
Not a
team,
pet or
and
a cat.
Bayonetta 2 is produced
Said Luca.
by a wonderful woman.
How are you, Bayonetta?
So it's like it's a whole taking control of sexuality and femininity. Also, this was a silly costume decision to make.
It's an easy trade to get him to make these for me. And don't get it twisted, Bayonetta.
Because the hats all clip through each other. Oh god.
Look, I know you've got nothing
But-
but secrets.
Kind of going on from that, this is obviously going into a slightly complex debate that I have brought up before.
But if there's one
I think
thing
it
I've
was
learned in my line of
when we were in the
work,
Cathedral of
it's that I love
Cascades,
you.
maybe other places.
Story.
But that is kind of the biggest problem of how women are represented in video games, is that at present, generally there is only kind of two types of women. You have the damsels in distress, and then you have the kind of overly sexualized badass. And kind of... they never really get more complex than that, which is a problem. But I honestly feel that Bayonetta as a character, well, obviously evidently problematic in certain aspects, she's kind of a phenomenal female character, and probably one of the most memorable out there. And while kind of so much of the discussion on how women should be represented focuses on just cover them up, Bayonetta as a character kind of functions on saying, it's basically Bayonetta saying, I am a woman, this is who I am, I can be both graceful and badass at the same time. And also completely and utterly filthy, but this kind of... it's taking control of that and having agency. Obviously, once again, Bayonetta 2 kind of takes away some of that agency, but still in the grand scheme as a character, like, everything's very controlled. And I think that once gaming evolves enough to have a variety of female characters that can just be good characters, if anything, that's kind of the main problem that, I mean, it's even what films have a problem with, in sort of all the race and gender stuff. We just need to have a thing where gender, race, sexuality do not matter. These are just good characters who are what they are, and make use of who they are. And, I mean, I do think that gaming is kind of beginning to get there. The fact that Bayonetta exists is a good start. And obviously you've got Ellie in The Last of Us, who is kind of an excellent character. And obviously you have the whole stuff that's going on with Lara Croft. I don't necessarily agree with what they've done to her. I know that there are a lot of people who kind of prefer new Lara to old Lara, but I'm not one of them, unfortunately. So, kind of, we are kind of getting better at this sort of stuff. It's just kind of a case of it's just taking a long time to get there. I mean, I think part of the oddities that kind of happen, at least why I see sort of a lot of this, all of these kind of problems as just being really weird, is just because I have a very kind of simple worldview, in the sense of people should just be allowed to be who they are, and nobody should criticise anybody else for that. I mean, it's kind of very idealistic and utopian, and humanity just isn't like that. But I still don't see why it shouldn't happen. Also, I think this just was an absolutely terrible run of Glamour. Like, absolutely appalling. That's quite the leap of subject area, good grief. Going from very serious discussion about gender and race and all that to... This is a really terrible fight with Glamour. I go on the weirdest of tangents sometimes. I mean, I suppose it's kind of bound to happen when you have kind of a lot of very various interests, and especially when some of those interests are academic in nature. You just sort of kind of pull together all of your kind of subjects of knowledge and see how they fit. Also, like, I love the Umbrangeka outfit, but I'm not so much of a fan of the policewoman and the schoolgirl look. Like, I mean, they're good and all, but just a little bit simple. And I think that the outfits in Bayonetta 1 were slightly more unique. I mean, some of them were slightly even more questionable, because you had the cheerleader look and other things. I believe the way that it worked was that, so there was loads of kind of different designs made, and then Kamiya chose one design, Hashimoto chose one design, and I think it's Shimazaki chose one design. So all three who were involved, so the character designer, the director, and obviously Hideki Kamiya, who directed the original game and is the supervisor for this game, all kind of got a choice of what the optional costumes were going to be. So I like that they were kind of so pragmatic about all that. But I mean, in the end, it's sort of... What's really weird is that the majority of the outfits look better on Jeanne. I don't know whether that was intentional, but for some bizarre reason it's the case.
So much for a cat always landing on his feet, Cheshire.
Now, obviously, we are wearing the Samus costume now, which is awesome. Also, we've got the Bad Boy Bewitchment. I told you I was going to get it eventually. Now, the way that this works is that you can charge up your beam and shoot. It's really cool. You can also go into the Morph Ball. That is essentially what happens when you do Panther Within. And it is also possible to lower the visor, but I think that the manual control of that only appears in Bayonetta 1. Because I've tried it in Bayonetta 2 and I just cannot get it to work. I believe what happens though is that during fighting the visor does go down. So, well, you can just about see it. But kind of the visor does move. But it's only possible to control it in cutscenes in the Wii U version of Bayonetta 1. Also, you can do the space jump, which is great. They really went all out with these kind of Nintendo costumes. And they are all incredibly unique and very fun to use. And the really awesome thing is that I believe they are all available to purchase right at the start of Bayonetta 1. Obviously they don't exist in the original version of the game, so they are kind of a brand new edition. But I really like that they did do that. And make them available from the start, because it gives kind of people who have already played Bayonetta something new to play around with.
Kind of adult picks on little children?
I'm not a child!
A mask? Let me guess. This is one of your assistants, little one?
Nothing comes to mind, love. Sorry. Maybe you've got something you'd like to tell me, love. I'm not a fan of getting wrapped up in domestic disputes.
Trust me, little one. He's not my type.
Now, one thing that's frustrating with Bayonetta 2 is that as you increase the difficulty, certain fights get increasingly ridiculous. The Masked Lumen Sage is one of them. And come Infinite Climax, it's just redonkulous.
My, you're a Lumen Sage.
Because kind of these guys begin to not be able to be stunned by Umbran Climax, and effectively the only way that you can hit them is during Witch Time, which is just stupid. Also, this guy was already fast to begin with. On third Climax he just goes even more bonkers. Although I think in one of the fights I did get the really weird thing where he was surprisingly not as aggressive as I was expecting. In general, I'd probably say that the perfect balance for this fight is found on third Climax. Because he's kind of aggressive enough, but also possible to actually hit. Whereas Infinite Climax is just hell. And it's the same with pretty much all of the kind of mid-size bosses. So Balder and Alrone and Lopter / Prophet and even Aesir, like all of them are just a lot more fun to battle on third Climax than even the most difficult battle difficulty, which is Infinite Climax. Now, it is possible to freeze Balder, it just takes a ridiculous amount of time. He doesn't quite play ball. I mean, sometimes it can work, but I don't think I ever quite managed to get it to happen, which is frustrating. But yes, we are coming to the end of part 1 of 3rd Climax. Because sort of... I probably could have shortened some of these fights, but I wanted to show them off. I mean, at the time when I was recording this, I wasn't even sure I was ever going to get to record, like, infinite climax and stuff. Because I still wasn't quite sure how I was going to do everything. So, upon editing, it was kind of just like, right, include a bunch of stuff, and then it just sort of grew and grew and grew, because there was stuff I didn't really want to cut out. But obviously, as you can see, I'm having trouble with this guy. I mean, I always do. And, I mean, I struggled on 2nd Climax, let alone this much higher difficulty. But it is still a really wonderful fight. And, oh my god, in the gallery that exists in the game, there's some phenomenal concept art of this fight. Like, it is actually so beautifully stunning. It's insane. Because I was just finishing off recording Bayonetta 2 the other day, actually. So, you can see where my commentary and my actual footage recording coincides. And just some of that art is beautiful, especially of this fight. It's just so insanely detailed and colourful and just, oh my god. I'm very excited to show it off to all of you because it's just beautiful. And once again, I am desperate for the Eyes of Bayonetta 2 to be released out west, because that's just going to be one of my most favourite art books ever. Because, I mean, the art of Bayonetta in general is just stunning. Platinum Games have got some phenomenal artists on their team. They really, really do. To be fair, I'll also say that Platinum Games are probably one of the best development teams in existence. Well, maybe not in existence, but certainly working today. They have some really clever programmers, some really amazing artists. They've got some phenomenal directors and excellent producers, and just in general, they have a spectacularly well put together team. And also they seem to be very, very, very good about hiring new staff members. So, like, they kind of get internships for people and bring them into the fold, which is really, really awesome. But anyway, there we go. Part 1 of 3rd Climax is complete. It's time to head on to, I think it's chapter 5 through 12 or something like that.